So your nervous system, it's not just physical activity that affects it. It is also emotions and thoughts. So if you're overthinking, if you're panicking and feeling fearful and anxious, and you're not really doing anything to swat that away, you're gonna feel some of it. But if you're letting it run unchallenged by your own thoughts, and you're not challenging it saying, hey, this is just the nervous system, hey, this is part of the process. If you're not doing those things, guess what? You're already in a place where your symptoms are flaring up. It's only gonna flare up more and more and more and more. How's it going, guys? Miguel here from CFS Recovery. In this video, I'm going to be answering the question of, is an adjustment period or a symptom flare-up just like DOMS or a delayed onset muscle soreness when it comes to working out? Now, if you have worked out in the past, if you have done exercise or you've been into fitness, you're really going to relate to this video because it's actually a very similar concept to how you're sore after a workout, very similar to when you're doing things when you have CFS and you have a symptom flare-up. Me coming from a personal training background, this actually made a whole lot of sense because I have trained in my entire career probably over 100 clients for personal training, and these are short-term, medium, long-term clients. So I've seen them progress over the months and years, and it's actually a very similar trajectory. And when my doctor was explaining to me how to recover from this hypersensitive nervous system issue, it seemed exactly the same, right? The same trajectory, the same kind of patterns. Not saying that recovering from CFS is as easy as going to the gym and it's the same thing. No, they're very different, but the patterns and the trajectory of recovery, of making progress, is very similar. So let me just ask you this question, right? Has there ever been a time in your life when you did some exercise or you lifted some heavy things or you went on a hike with family or friends and then the next day you were really tired? Or maybe you did some push-ups when you were growing up and then the next day you were really sore. Or maybe you did some squats or walked around the city when you were traveling or were on vacation and your calves were sore after you did a whole bunch of activity. If that's ever happened to you, then you have experienced delayed onset muscle soreness. This is something specifically that happens when your body is adapting to a certain activity. There's also something called specific adaptation to imposed demand. This is the SEDS principle when it comes to fitness and exercise. So essentially what it is, everybody's body has a normal capability of what it's used to doing. Now, depending on what you do in life, depending on how much activity you're doing, that's what your body's normal, regular functioning level is. So let's say you're used to doing this much activity. If you all of a sudden do this much activity, this gap here, this is the capacity that your body needs to adapt to. So it needs to take it up a notch, right? Now, it doesn't happen overnight. It takes some time to get there. When it comes to muscles and working out, your body needs some kind of rest for it to rebuild itself. How muscles work is you actually tear the muscles down, right? That's why working out is painful and you get sore and it's grueling, and you don't see people in the gym, for the most part, having a smile on their face when they're lifting heavy weights. Right? You see them grunting, they're grimacing because they are tearing down the muscles. But that's what makes the muscles grow back even stronger, right? Your muscles, they tear apart and then they grow over each other so they get even bigger. That's how your muscles grow, right? And that's how you're able to do 10 push-ups one week, and the next week you could do 15 and then 20. And there's something called progressive overload, right? So gradual increase in stimulus on the body. Now, it's a little bit different when it comes to CFS because not only are you getting sore, you are getting symptoms, right? With working out, it's very basic. You get tired and your muscles are sore. When it comes to CFS and a hypersensitive nervous system, when you add on stimulus or capacity to doing things. So let's say you're able to go to the washroom 3 times a day and walk there. That's your level of capacity. Well, now all of a sudden, if you go outside and start walking 100 meters, there's a huge gap there, right? So it's not just getting sore. Now you're having headaches, you might get heart palpitations, your skin's burning, you get achy, you feel fatigued. So there's up to 40 or 50 symptoms that you can actually experience, right? So it's a lot more difficult to adapt to those things than it is just with muscle soreness, right? But it is very simple because you'll do an activity and then your body will need to adapt to it. right? Your body will need to get used to that level of activity. Now, another thing that happens when you're working out, what happens if you do too many push-ups? Or what happens if you lift too heavy? What happens if this is your normal level of capacity and all of a sudden you're doing this much activity? If that gap is too big, then you get an injury in the gym. I've pulled muscles, I've strained my pec, I've strained my shoulder, strained my back when I went too heavy. Well, very similarly, when you have CFS, if you do too much too soon, you get a slight injury, right? Or people can call it a crash, people call it a very large adjustment period. Very similar concepts. If you're walking to the washroom 3 times a day and all of a sudden you go outside and do a whole bunch of stuff, that's a lot of stimulus for your body to handle. So when you're exercising, you're either getting extremely sore or you're getting injured. With recovery, you're having a massive adjustment period, or in some cases you have a crash. A crash is when you are bedridden, you cannot move. People think they have a crash all the time. That's not the case. A crash is when you cannot move in bed, you cannot use your body, you even have trouble eating, you need to get spoon-fed. That's what a crash is. When you're at that stage and your body is flaring up, think of it like delayed onset muscle soreness, just like working out. There's no way to gain 10 pounds of muscle. If, let's say that's your goal, whether it's 10 pounds of muscles or you want to learn to run a marathon, right? You have to build yourself up to it. And in the process of getting from where you are to your goal over here, you need to do it in certain steps. And every step you're gonna be sore. It's gonna be uncomfortable. That's why not everybody can run a marathon, right? Because they don't train properly for it. That's why not everybody can bench press 200 pounds, right? Because they either injure themselves on the way or it just takes such a long time. It takes consistency. Similarly, that's why a lot of people don't recover, because they're afraid of the symptoms. They're afraid of the flare-ups. They see it as a sign of going backwards. Now imagine if you worked out with a personal trainer and they told you, okay, you're gonna be sore. This is all part of the process. And the first time somebody gets sore, they say, oh no, this is not good. I'm not supposed to feel pain. Well, guess what? That is a part of the process, right? So same thing with recovering from CFS. You have to look at it as part of the process. The flare-ups, they're not in the way, they are on the way. And in responding well to symptoms, that's how you get to the next level. Now, a common mistake people make is when their symptoms do flare up. Essentially, that happens after you add stimulus to the nervous system. Now, what would happen if someone worked out, they were very sore the next day, and their whole body was painful and hurting and achy, and they started working out even more? That's not the best way to do it, because guess what? You're not giving the body and the muscles space and time to recover and rejuvenate and pretty much get to the next level of strength and endurance. Well, same thing with CFS. You have to let your nervous system rest. So the problem people have is when they rest physically, they're not resting mentally. Well, even though they could be in bed all day, now they're worrying about symptoms. They're worrying about, did I go backwards? Did I do too much? Should I have done that? Maybe I should have stayed home. Well, guess what? That's like adding extra stimulus to your nervous system. So your nervous system, it's not just physical activity that affects it, right? It is also emotions and thoughts. So if you're overthinking, if you're panicking and feeling fearful and anxious, and you're not really doing anything to swat that away, you're gonna feel some of it. But if you're letting it run unchallenged by your own thoughts, and you're not challenging it saying, hey, this is just the nervous system, hey, this is part of the process. If you're not doing those things, guess what? You're already in a place where your symptoms are flaring up. It's only gonna flare up more and more and more and more. It's very similar to exercising, and when you feel sore, you start exercising even more, right? In the nervous system, you could rest physically, but if you're still overthinking, that's like adding extra stimulus. That's like working out even more, right? So that's where people kind of get confused and lost, because they think they're resting, they think they're giving their body a break, but they're really not, right? Just because you're lying down in bed or sitting on the couch not moving does not mean your nervous system is resting. If you're doing that and your emotions and your cognitive activities are under control, then yes, that is your nervous system resting. So throughout the whole course of recovery, going back to when I was recovering, that's how I would see it. So I would actually look at my symptom flare-ups as a positive thing. I would say, oh, okay, this is great. This is just like when I used to get sore before, right? The only way I got stronger was to stimulate my body, my muscles, and then rest after, right? And let my body recuperate. Well, same thing in recovery. The only way to move forward is to add stimulus to my nervous system and then pull back, and then add more stimulus and pull back. There's something called progressive overload when it comes to working out. So pretty much every couple weeks or every couple months, you add more weight, you add more stimulus. In recovery, you add more stimulus over time, but you have to be very careful, especially in the beginning, right? Because you need to understand how to respond well when it comes to having adjustment periods. And I have a video right up here that explains just how to do that, how to deal with adjustment periods. Right now, if you can get that under control, then you can start adding more and more stimulus, right? But that's why it always helps to have someone looking over your plan. Very similar to having a personal trainer, making sure you're doing the exercises properly, making sure you're getting enough rest, making sure you're not putting yourself in a position where you will get injured. Same thing with CFS. If you can bring someone in to help walk you through that process, someone who's been there before, not a doctor who says, hey, we should do this, but they've never actually been through it, right? You want someone who has experience and been in your shoes and understands not just physically what to do, but mentally. They have to have been there before. Because I know so many people who have gone to these, I don't want to get banned or anything, but these LC clinics, these long blank clinics, something that they got from a virus, right? And then the doctors just put them on a bike, or they send them to physiotherapy or a physical therapist. They'll get them on a bike, say, hey, you have to walk 500 steps a day. Tomorrow, we're gonna do 550, then 600, then 650. You cannot do that when you have CFS, right? There has to be lots of breaks in between. But you wanna have help from somebody who's been in your shoes before, and you need to have a specific plan in place, right? Not just for the physical activity, but the mental and emotional things. Because when you flare up, I guarantee you, your emotions will start to be all over the place, right? I haven't met a single person who had their emotions completely under control and needed reminders on their way to recovery, right? And that's where you could bring in someone like us. We have created a recovery system, basically step-by-step plan where we find out where people are, where they're starting, and we just plug them into our system. So it's step by step, and you avoid relapses or going backwards if you follow the plan, right? So same thing, just with a personal trainer. If you follow the plan, it should go well, right? If you don't follow the plan, it's not gonna go well, right? The thing with this is just a bit trickier because your mindset and your emotions play a huge role in this, actually more so than physical activity does. But that's all I wanted you to think about in this video. It's looking at your symptom flare-ups and adjustment periods, not as things that are in the way, it's things that are on the way. And it's very similar to how when you work out, you get sore. Your body will adapt to that new level of stress. If you're here, you did this amount of activity, it's kind of a shock to your system, but it will build itself up to that level if you give it the time and space it needs to recalibrate itself. So you can't let the emotions and the overthinking get in the way, because that's only adding more stress to the nervous system, right? So that's all I wanted to share with you guys. I hope that analogy makes sense. If you have worked out in the past and you've been in fitness, and actually a lot of people who get CFS, they were very fit. If that's you, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. And I want you to start thinking about your adjustment periods and your symptom flare-ups exactly like that. But I hope you got some value from this video. If you did, leave a comment down below. What was your biggest takeaway? And is this making sense, right? Watch this video again in order to really get this idea wrapped around your head. It's really gonna help you stay calm, cool, collected when you do have flare-ups and adjustment periods. And if you did want extra help, if you wanted that personal training, like attention to detail for your specific situation, like I said, I've created a recovery system where we walk people through the different stages of recovery, because it's not just about giving someone a plan and saying, hey, do this brain training. How do we get you from bedridden to sitting up again? How do we get you from sitting up to moving around within the house? How do we do that and start introducing chores? How do we get you to walking outside, right? How do we get you driving again? How do we get you to hanging out with friends again, doing groceries, going for regular walks and activities? Most of all, how do we get you working again? And, you know, just being a part of society. We call it reintegrating back into the world. And all of those different steps, that's what we help people with, right? It's not just about saying, hey, you know, do this and keep doing it, you'll be good. No, we actually help you through the different stages, because our goal is to take you from surviving to thriving. That's our whole motto here, right? We don't want you to just wake up and then your goal for the day is to make it till the end of the day. That's no way to live. Our goal is to get you thriving. We want you to wake up and you have the freedom of different options, people, places, things to do, right? That's what living is. So we want to get you from surviving to thriving. If you wanted to learn more about our Recovery Jumpstart program, just click the link down below and you can learn all about it to see if you're a good fit. We do this on an application basis only, but always remember that you are a thriver and you are just one mind shift away from living a life with thriving health. I'll see you in the next video.